Well, it's an honor to be able to speak to all of you. I graduated here in 2001, and then my wife, Meggan, graduated from Mary Hardin Baylor down the road was it 99? 99? And so being Confessions of an Entrepreneur, I was going to give a little bit of backstory just to kind of, I guess, one of the things that was helpful for me while I was here at Baylor was hearing the stories of entrepreneurs. Tell their journeys for how they went from A to B to C to D. So I'm going to go all the way back to my childhood days, very, very quickly, bring you to the college days, and then get into Lily Jade. But I wanted to make sure that you all knew that this is going to be a really open opportunity for you to ask questions. I maybe have a natural pause here or there, but if you just want to throw a hand up, if you've got a question or if you feel like I need to clarify something, or if there's something that you've thought about before and you're like, wait a minute, he said that. I wonder how he did this or that. Please interrupt me. This isn't. It doesn't have to be like a linear thing where at the end we have 15 minutes of Q&A. Although we can do that. But I love participation. I love feedback. So if you have questions, just throw a hand up and we'll stop. But yeah. So I graduated in 2001, and I graduated with an entrepreneurship and international business double major out of the business school. Do we have any entrepreneur majors in here? Got one? International business? 2, 3? 1, 3? No international business. Okay. Well, it was a fantastic program, and I arrived here because my dad, years ago, I think I was probably 3rd grade, and he said, son, I'm going to teach you how to make money. Okay, great. So he was leasing a commercial building at the time for his small business. He was a physical therapist, and he took me over to the property manager and had me negotiate this contract as a 3rd grader. Made me buy my own equipment. He actually gave me a loan to buy the equipment. And so I bought a lawnmower from my dad and a weed eater from my dad. And he would drive me up there to his office. And when he was working on weekends, I was up there mowing the thing. And it was cool because I was making $145 a month, which was big bucks for a 3rd grader. And I had a checkbook and a bicycle. And I would ride my bike to the local convenience store and write checks. And they would look at me like, we don't use checks anymore, right? But I would write a check and they'd look at me like, do your parents know you have this? I'd be like, this is mine. But kind of early on, I had this idea of oh wow, I can make more potentially in a shorter amount of time than my friends as I got into high school who were working part-time jobs in other places. So when I got into high school, I did work a couple of employment type positions as well, but I always had some sort of side gig. I was trimming trees, I was washing windows, I was doing something. And when I got to Baylor, I actually had a full-fledged tree trimming business with employees, or 2 or 3 employees, and things like that. And so so that carried me through school. Bought a wedding ring for Meggan and paid for our honeymoon. But when I was at Baylor in the entrepreneurship program, they would send people through like me or other people everyone from I remember the president of Dr. Pepper at the time. I think his last name was Turner, Jim Turner. May have been his name. I don't know if you guys remember. But that was fascinating. And then really, really small business guys that were, I remember one guy he was servicing helicopters that were flying out to oil derricks. And then one guy, his name was Don Mowat, and he was a biotech angel investor out of Seattle. And this guy stuck, we just clicked. And I remember Don he's like, hey, call me anytime, email me, whatever, and feel free to bounce ideas off of me. And so that stuck with me, that relationship. And I leveraged Don's wisdom and insight for a number of years in college. So one of my first, this being the Confessions thing, one of the first things I would say as a takeaway or a nugget is your relationships matter. Whether that's if you're looking to start a business or you're looking to go work for somebody, but particularly in the entrepreneurial world, if there are people that if you can find either peers or mentors that have gone before you and done something, and you say, hey, I'd like to do something like that. Latch onto that relationship, keep up with it, stay in touch, ask questions, and use that, because it really can help you get through some really sticky points where your inexperience can't carry you, but their experience can help speak to your situation. So while I was at Baylor, I had an internship at the International Small Business Development Center in Dallas. And there was an office from Mexico called CAFOSE, and what they did is they helped bring business from Texas back to Mexico. And I ended up being friends with the people next door. And so after I graduated, my wife and I had this idea for these wall-hanging crosses. So I called up the CAFOSE office, and I said, hey, can you help us find factories down in Mexico? And they said, well, sure. And it was so nice because they basically, at no cost, you have to fly down there, but once you meet them, they shuttle you around. They're your interpreter. They help you negotiate business with everybody. And we ended up starting this small line of wall-hanging decorative crosses, and we were selling them at the World Trade Center Dallas market and the Atlanta. There's a market in Atlanta, the wholesale market, and so we were in showrooms all across the U.S. One of the things that I learned through that, though, is cash flow. So in a wholesale business, your margins are a little tighter, and so we were selling wholesale, and we just got going. So I was bankrolling myself, trimming trees as much as I could to pay for the cost of attending these shows and everything else, and it became exhausting. And so eventually I had a buddy of mine whose dad had a large security distribution company in San Antonio, said, hey, why don't you take all these entrepreneurial efforts that you've got going on in your drive, why don't you come work for me? I've got a few projects I'd like to put you on. So I did that for a while, but I still had this bug inside of me like, hey, I want to grow my own thing. And I ended up transitioning to another company in the security space after working for them for 3 or 4 years, and had an outside sales job, which is another pro tip for those of you wanting to start businesses or interested in wherever you're at in your own journey. If you are strapped for cash and you can find a job that will, hey, as long as I'm hitting my numbers or as long as I'm performing well for the company, I've got this extra free time. And that's what that position allowed. Like, my boss was not looking over my shoulder because I was hitting my quotas and exceeding them. And so, hey, out of sight, out of mind, I was building another business at the same time I had a full-time job. And so I had a buddy of mine from Baylor who had a he was a molecular bio guy. I think he had a master's in molecular biology. And he was working for a biotech in Austin. And so we ended up getting together through a mutual friend. I hadn't seen him in years. Got together in San Antonio. And we're talking like, man, I've got this, I'm telling him about my entrepreneurial bug. And he's like, man, I'd love to do something too. I've been working for this biotech for a while. We should do something. So I found some lab space in San Antonio. I recruited him from Austin to come live in San Antonio. I pulled a little bit of family money together, kind of scrapped it together, and we started a company called Cellcore. And Cellcore was doing contract work. We basically did contract work for a chemical, well, the primary thing that we did was this contract work for a chemical company called Sigma Aldrich. And Rich's specialty was developing transfection reagents. And these are the things that get nucleic acids, DNA, RNA, siRNA, those things into cells for experimenting. I didn't know nothing about that. But I did know about negotiating, and I knew about being scrappy and pulling things together. So I worked out this this little equity, small equity arrangement with a biotech lab in San Antonio, and they let us in and use their facility for a little slice of the pie, and we started doing contract work. Well, in the middle of that, we realized, hey, this contract work is only going to take us so far. We don't really want to build out a big business, doing contract work for people. We want to own something that we can sell. And so we started thinking about what kind of problems are we running into in the laboratory? What kind of problems do scientists tend to run into in the laboratory? And one of the things that, particularly in molecular bio, that you have to deal with or contend with is the issue of contamination, or sterility control and temperature control on your experiments. And so this was a space that hadn't been innovated in a long time. You've got these old water baths that basically it's like a crock pot for the lab. It heats things up to a certain temperature, and you put your reagents or your cell culture mediums, you put that in there, and you bring it to temp, and hopefully it stays mostly dry, but how is it going to? Because it's dunked in water. And so a lot of times things would flip over, and you would have $10,000 worth of reagents and 3 weeks worth of work down the drain. And so we're like, let's fix this. So we started pulling together all kinds of materials, whether it was, we used plastics and different types of resins and ceramics, and we tried carbon fiber and all these things, little particulate things that you could put inside of a tub and hopefully heat it up and keep these experiments stable and warm and free of contamination. And we finally landed on this certain material. It was an aluminum billet that came in a real raw form. It was just grainy and gritty, and we polished it up and stuck it in there, and it worked perfectly. And long story short, but our first purchase order from a large biotech company was about $500,000 PO. We're about a year into the business, and it was a big deal for us. It was kind of like the make it moment. And so then we went on to develop instrumentation. We said, hey, there's got to be, we've got to optimize around this stuff. We developed instrumentation for it. We worked with the factory that was in up around Cornelius, Oregon. It's the largest domestic producer of laboratory equipment. And they started making equipment for us to our spec. We worked with engineers, but we spec'd it out to work with our stuff really well. And then that company ended up buying us about a year after that first purchase order from a company called Invitrogen. So after I sold that, we were like, hey, what next? It was enough to take some time off, and it was enough to figure out what I want to do next, but certainly not enough to retire on. So Meggan and I were talking, and I'm like, man, it's been a nice break, but we've got to come up with something, or I either need to go get a job or we need to start another business. And so she had been, and maybe you want to tell this part of the story? Why don't you tell this part? Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm Meggan, by the way. And so I came to Landon. We have 2 daughters. I'm a mom of 2. They're now 16 and 12. But at the time, being a first-time mom, I had been in outside sales like Landon. I fully cannot endorse that enough, that if you're on an entrepreneurial track and journey, or even business, that finding something in outside sales that you have spare time to build something else. He and I both have done this multiple times in our lifetime, and it's been very fruitful for our family. And so if you're young and thinking, what do I do next? I mean, I've sold office supplies and you name it. I've probably uniforms, professional grade uniforms, and so very, very valuable to that. Okay, so I came to years ago when I first had Caroline, our oldest. I was like, there's no diaper bag out here that I would want to carry. They had prints all over them. They were quilted 16 years ago. They didn't convert into a backpack well. There were just lots of features that I knew as a woman and as a mom and even as a businesswoman, it just was missing. So I tried name brands and off brands, and I would tell Landon really jokingly, because I don't have a design background. My background is in communications and journalism, and I really wanted to be the next Kelly Ripa. I really wanted to be the next Kelly Ripa. And so... I
don't know if they know who that is.
Maybe not. That ages us.
That's before your time.
That just ages us. We're old.
Okay, here we go.
Anyways, okay, so I was not even thinking. I can't cut straight. I don't have any design background. I can't sew. And so this idea in my mind of this diaper bag, that I had it in my mind's eye, and I would tell Landon, one day I'm going to create my own diaper bag line. One day I'm going to create a handbag, a tote for everyone. And he'd be like, yeah, babe. Neither of us knew anything in that world. A factory, sourcing, materials, And so, anyways, that is, where am I going with that?
Well, you were talking about how the idea came to be.
Oh yeah, that's how the idea came to be. So after Lab Armor sold, it was like I went to him and said, I really have this idea and I think we can do something with that. And we found a sewer on Etsy. She made little handbags, and they were quilted and something that I would have never carried, but I reached out to her, and so did Landon. We did together and said, would you make a pattern for us? We don't know how to sew, but I have this design in my mind. And would you create a pattern of a bag? And I remember I gave her all the specs. I thought, this is it. This is going to be awesome. And it arrived in the mail, and we had a group over from church that night. I'll never forget it. And they had been really championing our idea. And they were like, it's here, it's here. And we opened it, and it was nothing like I had spec'd or wanted. It was
roadkill.
It was bad.
It's one of those moments where it's like, is this where we quit?
Yeah, it was like, we're probably not intended for this space. This is not our world. We've got to find something else quickly. And all the women were my friends. They were gathered around. Again, the guys were kind of with Landon because it was a Bible study night. And they were really trying to affirm me, I could kind of see it. I mean, I wouldn't carry it, but there is progress. And so that's where we started, with an Etsy shop sewer. And from there, we we then found like a moonlighting designer who worked for another brand, a bigger brand in New York City, and she really did kindly, hour by hour, teach me everything I needed to know. And along the way. But I remember her saying, well, how wide do you want the gusset to be? And the gusset is the side of a bag, by the way. I had no idea. I was like, the what? And your D-ring, what size D-ring? Well, what's a D-ring? And that's some terminology for some hardware. But I say this because it is, it's a space that we knew nothing about. Now, one thing I did know about, and I really wanted to touch on before I pass the microphone back to Landon, is while I had no design and sewing and measuring experience in that world, no pattern making experience, what I did have, though, is like a heart for women and a heart for moms. And having been a mom for so many years, my heart really began to grow and develop for other moms. And I remember telling the Lord, God, how will you use this? Like, my heart's burning for this community. Some women are lonely and they're sad and they're at home with their babies and they don't have community. And so you may be like me, where you're like, now I'm in the handbag world, and now we have factories, and we source our leather and design bags, and now I design a new collection every year, and my girls are designing handbags. But it's like the Lord was so kind to me because he took a love for women and a love like what was in my heart, and then a love for being married to Landon and doing something entrepreneurially and supporting one another, and then took
that wasn't your bet.
No, it wasn't.
You weren't ready to. You're like, hey, I'll.
No, yeah. I'm not the risk taker. Let's just say that. I'm not the risk taker of the family. But, and then a love for fashion and a love for handbags and accessories and name brands. And he wove it together and created this brand that I still marvel at as a miracle. Like, truly, we don't belong here. It took me years. I would tell my sisters, I'm such a poser, because we would go to these, fashion trend shows or these, and we would show our collection and people would love it, and we would meet other designers, and I'd be like, I'm a mom, I was homeschooling my children, and now I'm here. But he's going to talk more about the process, and then we'll show you kind of some of our other stuff.
Yeah, okay, that's yours. But so I think kind of jumping back into how do we get Lily Jade going, and what were some of the pitfalls? I think with anything entrepreneurial, and as you're working through the process, you realize that it's a lot of just consistently learning from your mistakes. Learning, okay, wow, I didn't know that, now I do, okay, and you apply something new, and then that thing breaks, and then you're like, oh wow, okay, got to fix this. So, for example, I think when we first started out, we had a couple of things in mind. One was, wouldn't it be cool to make these bags in the U.S.? And I still do think that's really, really cool. So for those that are doing it successfully, kudos to them. But that was really tough for us. We found a factory in New York called Baikal, B-A-I-K-A-L. So if anybody they make small batches of bags and things like that, but they're not very good at scale. And they're really expensive too, and I'll tell you why it's maybe better to start outside of New York if you're going to do this. So we get started. I'm thinking, hey, it's actually going to be easier in the U.S. They speak my language. It's in New York. That means it comes to me really fast, and that means I can get my samples done fast. All these assumptions, you're thinking, of course, this makes sense, and then it turns out not to be true. So we. Okay, we've got this design. We've narrowed it down. We found I think you mentioned our designer, right? That we first consult. Yeah, that's right. So we find this design consultant where Meggan's vision. She was able to take Meggan's vision and actually get it onto paper in a way that a factory could take that and then begin to make patterns out of it and make a bag. So we got it. We're on it. We're making progress. Okay, where should we make this? And so the consultant's like, hey, I know this place in New York. Of course, later on, she's like, a year later, she's like, I probably should have told you just go to China first. But she's like, you were really set on making it in the U.S. I'm like, just tell me the right way next time, But so we're like, she's like, okay, well, I can help you make it in the U.S. So we talk to this factory, we get in this stuff, and they're like, what, are you going to send us the zipper? I'm like, what do you mean send you the zipper? Like, you don't just have zippers laying around? Okay, we'll find something for you. All right, well, can you give me some options? Well, we'll just pull something off the shelf. Okay. What about those snaps? What kind of snaps? Are you going to send us the snaps to make the... You don't have snap. Come on, what are you talking about? You make handbags. You put a snap on it. I didn't know there were like different snaps. Okay. Where are you going to get the leather from? Oh, I've got to buy and send you leather. Okay. Call up our consultant. Hey, where do we get the leather from? Oh, you need to talk to so-and-so over on the other side of town. Okay, got it. Ring, ring. Okay, can you supply some leather over here? Yeah, but how much do you need? Oh, that's not very much. Yeah, I don't know if we want to sell you leather right now. Oh, really? Well, but we're going to have this great brand, and it's going to be awesome, and trust me. Yeah, but we don't really do small quantities, and okay, well, we've got some extra stuff laying around. You can buy that, but if you want to put any real orders with this, it's got to be so many square feet. Oh, okay, cool. All right. By the time we finally get the bag and then we get it, we're like, hey, this is actually really beautiful, but it's actually really heavy too. And we're like, let's give it a go. So we have this cotton liner. Now we use polyester now. It's much lighter weight. This thick leather that hasn't really been skived down in the right places and designed in a way that to lighten up the bag. Just all these little things that need to be perfected. But we thought it was great. And we had this cute little Made in America flag on the inside down at the bottom left-hand corner. And it was great. And we launched the brand, and we're thinking we're going to sell to boutiques. We're going to sell to, we're going to wholesale it too, maybe. Well, we're going to wholesale it. We're going to online sell it, and we're going to probably have a price point around, I don't know, $500-600 or something like that. And it's going to meet these needs. Like I don't think we touched on the story about. Did you talk about the backpack thing? And so, just checking the time. So the concept that we introduced, because I probably should. Yeah, we'll circle back to that. So I'll tell you how it evolved, and then we can talk about conceptually what we were introducing to the market later. But we have this cool feature set, and we bring it to market, and it's like crickets. Uh-oh, this problem. So we just sunk, I don't know, a lot into getting this going, and we're not seeing any sales. Pivot, right? Like you have to figure out what to do next. And so we're thinking, okay, this price point's really too high probably. But the problem is the factory in New York was charging us it cost me like $190 to make one of these bags. So I'm like, I gotta sell it for $500 or $600. We're like, all right, do or die time. We're gonna basically not make any money on these bags and sell out our inventory as best as we can. And then in the meantime, we've got to figure out how to make these bags cheaper. So I call up my consultant. Hey, we've got all this inventory. It's not moving. We're going to have to cut the price down because this stuff isn't working. And we've got to have your help. Please, can you put us in touch with the factory or somebody? I don't think we can make it here in the States. And she's like, well, there's a couple other options in the States, maybe. But yeah, I've got a couple factories I can put you in touch with overseas. Okay, cool. So we're working that angle. We get to we finally land with an overseas factory, and the stuff comes in. And by the way, way faster, first of all. Oh, you want a sample? Great. Here's a picture of 10 different snaps. Here are 3 different zipper types. Here's all the different leather types that you can use. Which ones you pick? And it's like, I want that. We were like, whoo! And it happened so fast. And their whole business model, I like to put it like this, like manufacturing in Asia, or particularly in regions that have a specific focus or specialty, so handbags in China. It's like the old days, like in the automotive industry, where around Detroit, you had a guy that you had a shop that made transmissions, and a shop that made tires, and a shop that made the equipment that made the steel frames. It's like an industry that works together. Well, that doesn't exist here in the U.S. anymore. You want buttons and snaps? China. You want zippers? China. You want liners? Probably China. You want leather? Well, you could get it from the U.S., which we do, but we first went to China. And there's more of it. It costs less, and it's probably same quality or better quality than what you're going to find with a supply from somewhere else. But that stuff is largely not made here anymore. And we didn't know that. So as soon as we got to China, it was like kids in a candy store just picking all the stuff. It was really cool. In fact, little side note, I did try to come back to the US one time. And there's a company called Waterbury Leather. They're in Connecticut. And I called the guy. I said, hey, I've been manufacturing in China for a little bit. We really love the idea of making it in the States. Is there any way we could bring it back here? And he's like, well, send me a couple of your bags, And this company used to make all of Coach's bags before they moved to Mexico, and I think they moved on beyond that. I don't know if they produced in Mexico, but for a season they were making it in the States and then down to Mexico. And so they have capacity. I mean, they should be a big factory, right? They should be able to handle our stuff. We weren't making that many bags, but he got the bags. He's like, this is too complex. We only make simple stuff now. We used to make from Coach. Yes, I know, but we're just, the industry's changed. So even, and I had the similar conversation with another factory as well. Like, that industry doesn't exist here anymore. So if you want to play that game, you're going to adjust your product, or you can go build a factory yourself and probably, it's just a different market. Our market, the young mom market, it's already a stretch to spend $200 to $300 on a diaper bag. So we just had to adapt, and we realized, hey, Asia is going to be where it's at for us. We had some significant trials with the first factory, and then moved to a second factory, which was better. And then finally, our last factory that we've been working with for the last 3 years has been doing a superb job. But there's always management. There's always keeping up with them. There's always some little something that gets missed along the way. And there are ways to help mitigate that, inspection processes and third-party type factory management, or we've got a guy that basically manages our orders and works directly with the factory. I've worked directly with the factory myself, and then I've worked with a guy that is basically my factory consultant, if you will, and this is much easier working with him, because if something goes wrong, it's on him, and he usually is pretty quick about fixing it. So, but yeah, there are all these little things that you learn along the way, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from anything, like I said, is just a willingness to pivot and not giving up, and realizing sometimes you're going to take losses to get your long-term wins. And sometimes those losses that you take, you think we're going to sell out this inventory at a cost that basically we will sort of mostly recoup our cost and give us enough to put a purchase order in with an Asia factory, but it may or may not work out. And in our case, it did, but it's just that willingness to pivot and that willingness to just think, not necessarily consider alternate paths. Consider changing how you're marketing. Considering changing, hey, is this the right audience? Is this the right price point? Is this the right product? Is this the right feature set? All those things, you've got to have a willingness to change on the fly as you're going, especially as you're starting out. So is there anything you wanted to add there?
I would add to also whatever you're doing in life too, and this goes if you're an entrepreneur, if you're starting your business or not, but it's a real identity issue. So, we tell our girls all the time, Lily, Jade will rise and fall, but we're first your mom and your dad. We're first your parents. To learn to hold it loosely. And I say that because when we were first married and young and in our 20s, 22, 23, and we started our cross business, naively, I put a lot of my identity into it. It was after my maiden name. It was Neely by design. My maiden name is Neely. I remember sending Landon on a bus in San Antonio down into Guanajuato and San Miguel, am I going to see you? And we felt we are so risky, we can do this. And he'd be I met with the factory and I have samples. And then I would meet with the artist who made the clay molds, and we'd put them in a box and wrap them up neatly. And he would take those molds down to Mexico. And that first run, my identity was in that job. It was in what we were doing. It was Neely by design. I'm selling them at the local malls and kiosks. We did well for selling them retail. Our friends would see our kiosks. Oh, you're doing this? Where did you buy these? Oh no, we manufacture these. Not knowing what was about to come our way. And so from that moment, we were we're growing, but we grew too fast that it burst that bubble of what we could manage and maintain. And I remember just being okay, I'm Meggan Wood, this is Landon Wood. We first follow the Lord, and that's what we first do, and then after that, everything else comes. And so whatever you're doing, don't let it wrap up all of who you are. It's not, usually doesn't go well.
Yeah, I love that. Really, and it's how we've raised our kids too in terms of identity. Hey, this is something we do, it's not who we are, and they've grown up with that. It was funny because my daughter just recently moved schools, and I mean, I think there's probably a cool factor to your parents having a brand that is interesting, and you go do these interesting things that maybe other people, I mean, everybody's got interesting lives, but it's kind of, there's some unique stories that come along the way with some of the travel and the things like that. And like, I think she'd been at this school for who knows how long, and one of her friends was like, wait, you never told me that da-da-da-da-da. And I was just like, awesome. Like, she doesn't feel the need to prop herself up by telling her friends, oh, my parents do this or that or whatever. I'm like, okay, something's made it in there, you know, because she's really found her identity in like her love for God, her love for her friends, her love for her neighbors and those around her. And so we've really worked to establish that in the kids.
And that matters in the entrepreneur world, because everything you do, like when we were first starting Lily Jade, I was homeschooling our girls full time. I had no desire to start a business at the time. And so I literally would like teach them in the morning, and then they would like play, and I would work with Landon in the afternoon. We'd put them to bed, and we would work until 1 or 2 in the morning, and then start up again. I mean, it was exhausting, and I remember that was 10 years ago probably. Like, okay, I can't do this for long, but in that moment, you feel like this is all I'm doing. Like, my whole world is this. And it was also unto the invisible. I remember people would make comments, and they're not bad people, well-meaning people, but they would say, like, well, my husband has a real job, because they couldn't see the fruit yet of what we were building.
Which is hard as a wife, particularly like Meggan. She grew up in a household where like, hey, you're going to go to college and you're going to marry a guy that went to college and he went and got a job, and this is what it's going to look like, and he's going to have a 401k and an insurance policy to help you out. And like our insurance consisted. I mean, I always had insurance, but it was like, you know, high deductible plan and like just getting by, you know. And so it was unsettling. Her parents were kind of like, they were supportive, but they were also like...
They were very supportive.
They were also like cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic is a good word, yeah.
Well,
I think as any parent would be.
Yeah, of course. And so...
But I do feel like in the entrepreneurial journey, there is not a whole lot of fruit to your labor at the beginning. Nobody sees anything. And so it's like kind of working unto the invisible. And then eventually they're like, wow, website. Oh, wow. And I remember a friend of mine being like, I saw a Lily Jade bag at H-E-B. I mean, she was like, you better get in your car and run there now. What'd I do? I got in my car and I ran. I totally did. I totally was like finding her. I'm like, I'm going to find her. And when I first saw my first Lily Jade in the wild, I think the sweet mama was like, whoa, she's crazy. But I literally was like, hi, do you like your bag? Do you like that bag? Do you know the name of that bag? What do you like about that bag? And she was like, I actually, my friend bought this bag for me. I'm like, do you like it? What do you not like about it? So that, those are some stories along the way. Now when we see a Lily Jade, I tell my girls, and especially Landon, please don't say anything. Please don't say anything. Like, yeah, Landon totally chases him down.
Hey, this is like, I'm trying to figure out, like, how did you find it? How did you figure out, did you see an ad? Did your friend tell you about it? Like, I want to know. I think this is customer, this is data. Give me data. And
I know we don't have like pictures, but we're Lily Jade, Jade Co. on Instagram, and that can kind of put like a name and a face as far as what we do and what our bags look like. One thing that really did set us apart in the diaper bag world was, and still is, this idea of we did 2 bags in one. So many times as women, for me, I know I'd go through handbags and large totes. And we wanted to create such quality that the bag could be carried well beyond the baby years. So in my child 6 versus 2, I could still have a really nice tote. It's also a great selling point within a family. Honey, I need a bag, but it'll be for many years to come. It may be $300, but it's gonna last. But really, we have built a brand around quality. And this is an example, if you want to show it, of a removable insert that came with our leather bags, and they converted into backpacks. And now we have large and smalls, but this was the original concept that was, I think that's...
It's sold bundled with most of our bags.
Yeah.
We've kind of moved away from that.
Yeah. Now we have other ways to organize your bag.
You can have that, or you can have packing cases or other things, so we give them options.
Yeah, I know. One thing I was going to touch on too is a place that we didn't pivot fast enough in the market, and that was with, we were strict leather and nylon, and we were going to anchor in that place, just like we were going to be made in the USA, and we're going to offer the best leather, which we do.
I give it like a 1 minute?
Yeah,
intro?
sure.
So when Meggan had this fantastic idea of putting together a diaper bag that didn't look like a diaper bag, that could be worn 3 ways: crossbody, shoulder carry, or backpack carry, and had this high-end appeal, had all the organizational components that you'd want on a bag on the inside, this plush liner, just a beautiful, like, high-end bag. It wasn't out there. Like, there were diaper bags that were expensive, but the quality wasn't necessarily there because I went and bought them. And I wanted to figure out, like, hey, okay, what's your return process like? If I buy it, and what emails am I getting from you? Just kind of doing like recon, trying to figure out how everybody else is doing it. And I noticed the bags that I was buying, like, the quality wasn't really that great. The customer service was kind of lacking. And anyhow, so we introduced this concept to the market, which was, I think probably the most novel thing was a diaper bag that doesn't look like a diaper bag that could be worn as a backpack. And we were the only ones in market. We were going like crazy because there was such a vacuum there. Everybody's like, yes, we want that. And I felt like, I remember the one day I was like, we made it, when we went to this one conference and the fossil rep was there talking about her fossil stuff. And we were on a panel with the fossil rep, and I was sitting next to her, and she goes, "You're Lily Jade?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, how do you know Lily Jade?" She goes, "Everybody knows about Lily Jade." I'm like, I barely know about Lily Jade, like, I just started it. I mean, we were probably 3 or 4 years into it, but we had grown so quickly, and there were a couple of blind spots that we had, significant blind spots, which if we had a do-over, would have changed some things. So why don't you fill them in on the blind spots?
So one of them, and it comes from the design of the brand, and that's my arm: the design, the materials, the marketing, the language. And so there's leather, and then there's vegan leather, faux leather, polyurethane, PU. And we saw brands take our concept, totally knock us off, and they used a much cheaper material. So when you're a new mom and you look at Lily Jade, and yet you love Lily Jade, you've heard of Lily Jade, you follow us for the aesthetics and the quality and the heart and the mission and all the things, but at the end of the day, it's price, it's your bank. And we miss that in terms of, Landon would say he probably was started that chatter a year before we even made that step of, like, we created a vacuum and they're just filling it with, like, cheaper bags, faster moving. And I was like, no, we're so, like, I don't want to lose the quality appeal and the high-end feel and look of what we had built really for the mom. Like, the mom, they would write us all the time, and they still do, like, in my yoga pants with spit up, I feel like a woman. Like, I feel beautiful with my handbag in the front of the shopping cart. Like, it mattered. And I thought, I don't want to lose that for them. But I didn't realize, we went to Asia, went to China, went to Hong Kong, sourced lots of vegan or PU polyurethane options, never landed on anything that felt right. Didn't give up, though. Totally knew, hey, this is the direction we have to go. And it just took a lot more digging. Leather is actually, in my opinion, easier to source and find than a very good high-quality touch, feel, luxe look and feel than a PU or a vegan leather. And so we're now in that space. We could definitely feel the traction the moment we had our first design that was vegan leather, faux leather go live. It was like tick, 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 tick. You just feel it kind of shift. And so we have more bags now, which is a better price point option, but still have an extended warranty, that still have a look and appeal to a mom, just with a variety of price points. So I really believed at the core years ago, if we go fake, then we're going to lose quality. And so it took us a little bit to find, no, we actually don't lose quality.
There's probably some truth to that. We watched our competition. One of the things that scared us is we're watching our competition and people complaining about their faux leather falling apart. Hey, your stuff is flaking off. You've got, I'm wearing this on the strap and everything's cracking. And then, I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, we've already solved so many problems. I don't want to have to solve that issue as well. And we kept thinking, hey, these folks are gonna get driven out. Like, because especially in the social media world, when everybody's chattering and talking smack about your brand because they're having a bad experience with it, it's not fun. Like, we haven't experienced that kind of thing at the level we watch some of our competitors, but we're like, they're gonna fold. And a couple of them did. but a couple of them stuck with it, and they're like, hey, we're just going to keep pumping this stuff out, and we watched them succeed, and we watched them grow, and they pushed through some of the things that we pushed through with leather and just general construction issues in general. They pushed through with figuring out the faux leather side, and so we should have done that, but on one hand, it's one of those things in retrospect, you're like, hey, yeah, but it felt right at the time, but we wish we had started much earlier.
Like, this is a faux leather sleek pack. You can carry it around your waist, or you can carry it crossbody. And you know, from a distance, and even construction and quality, nobody would say like, oh, that's vegan leather. But this is faux leather, and this is a great bag.
Yeah, we took about a year working with. I mean, it didn't have to take that long, but we had other things going on.
This is leather.
Yeah, but it took about the course of a year working with the vendor that was producing the faux leather to get the formula right. We're like, it's got to feel like this. It's got to be durable enough to last through however many, you know, basically the test that they use on this is a test for shoe strength, PU, polyurethane. So most bags are tested to a lower standard, or most materials tested to a lower standard. We use a higher standard. It's a thicker coating. The bonding material, or the bonding between the surface coat and the substrate is just stronger. And so we just wanted to dial into it, and we got it right. We got it, like, you won't find people complaining about Lily Jade faux leather having problems, but you will about other brands. But it was one of those things, like I said, wish we had gotten started earlier. We still have 10 minutes, and I wanted to, we've got some stuff to show or pass around or whatever, but we'd love to, and maybe what we could do is just, I was going to open it up for questions just while we've got some time. Yeah?
I have a list. There's only 4, though.
Oh, yeah, fire away.
Okay, first of all, where do you find the consultants?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Or networking. You know, you find one person, and then they just find one. Actually, I found probably our 2 most important people through LinkedIn and just reached out to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you look at their background and what they have to say?
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And then any advice on finding early adopters? Basically, like your first crowd, how did you guys find them?
Yeah, like for us, it's going to be different depending on what you're selling. Like you find where they're at. You find those pockets of interest. And maybe it's Reddit, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's TikTok, but you find where people are actually talking or engaged in that. Like for us, we had something that was a novelty. In other words, that concept wasn't on the market. Yes, there were diaper bags, but there wasn't a diaper bag backpack. So when we introduced it into a space where moms, so for us.
A leather diaper bag backpack. There were diaper bag backpacks.
No, but not like this, not a convertible. Okay, I take that back. Yes, when I'm talking about it, I'm not having to say the whole sentence. A backpack that doesn't look like a diaper bag, the Lily Jade concept. So, but thank you. But we introduced this concept to these women that were we found them at the time through blogs. And then from blogs we went to Facebook, and then, we were doing Facebook at the same time too, but it was blog/Facebook, and then it went to Instagram. Then it was Instagram for a while, and then it was images, then it was Reels, and then Stories, and now it's TikTok. Oh, so. But we're starting to get involved in TikTok. TikTok is like the cringiest one. But I think you just look and find out where they're talking, and I could probably answer that better if you had a specific one to dial down into, but yeah.
Did you ask the non-blogs to review?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And some of it was paid. At first we started off with just trade, and then we got into paid, and then it was a mixture of both. And then it went from there to Instagram, and we were just sending them out, and then we did a lot of paid. Our paid budget on Instagram was higher than our paid budget for ad spend for a season. And then it flipped back. Now we just do all trade, just an ambassador program, and then a ton of spend on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then, this is kind of a random question. How do you get in touch with factories? How do you find them?
Yep. So it's easier than it's ever been. Now the problem is finding the right ones or finding the good ones, which is trial and error unless you know somebody. So know somebody. That's a good one. The other one is trial and error. And then really just like, even when I didn't necessarily, like, even when I knew somebody, the factory they introduced to me ended up not being great. And so she felt bad about it, but she also had an interest in that factory succeeding because they were paying her on the back end, which I didn't know until later, which wasn't cool. So it can be a little sketchy sometimes, but there's sites like Alibaba, or just Google's your friend. These factories are sometimes on social media. Another way to do it, here's a good way. Find a brand, like if you're trying to get started off, it doesn't have to be handbags, it could be anything. Find a brand that you really admire, you like, that's making something in your space. And there's a way to reverse engineer who their factories are. If they're not, there are ways to conceal it too. So some of them may be concealing their identities, but because it's public record who you're importing from, you can find, it's been so long since I did it, I forgot the term. But basically what you're doing is you're reversing, you're looking up the import logs on the companies that you might be interested in making a product that you're interested in making. I did that on a couple of handbag factories. We didn't end up using them, but I interviewed them during the process. Yeah, from a couple of competitors that I had seen out there. Or they weren't actually diaper bag manufacturers. They were making cool handbags for just general use, and I said, hey, can you make cool diaper bags too? So.
Last question.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more relevant to where we are now. What are the best jobs to have now to gain experience that could be useful in an entrepreneurial field, like running a business? Like small entry-level jobs, like the best kinds that will teach you skills for that.
Yeah, that's good. I would say, if I was thinking about, one thing that you could do is, depending on the field that you're going into, go work. Anything in the field that you're going into would probably be helpful. Just a general exposure if you're like, hey, I really want a job. But if you're entrepreneurially minded and you're like, I want to build a business, sales is so good because you're going to meet the rest of the team. You're going to meet your support people, and you certainly can. You may not have to, depending on how distributed the team is, but you have the ability to reach out and connect with other people. So I would encourage a sales position of some sort, or some sort of a marketing position, because learning the market is absolutely vital. If you can manage things, you can eventually figure out the other stuff as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is a cool idea, by the way. I think I recognized your product from some women back in my church in Chicago.
Oh, no kidding.
When I went to your Instagram, they followed you, so I imagine.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
But I'm wondering, you guys talked about kind of where they might find you. Talked about social media, Facebook, ads, and I'm curious, do you sell exclusively on your website, and is that strategy? And can you talk a little bit to like why you chose to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason, so at first when we were thinking just the distribution model, which is not necessarily bad, but what forced me into direct, I was like, I am having trouble controlling quality. I would feel awful wholesaling something to somebody that then has to tell their customer, oh, sorry about that, I sold you a piece of junk. So if I had a quality issue, at least this is my thought in the beginning. It's not why I do it now, but in the beginning I was like, we've got to pick some things that we're all in on. One of them was like, we're going to be all in on direct to consumer. That was one of the decisions. Another one was like, hey, we're going to be all in on, like we looked at each other and said, we are going to own social media for like cool diaper bags, because it was just coming of age. I mean, it was a time when you could do that, and so we were the it brand for a while. But back to your question directly, initially it was because I wanted to control the customer experience, and if there was a problem, I was going to fix it. I didn't want them going back to someone else, and I didn't want to burn bridges with other people. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I'll do that later, but let me get good at what I'm doing first before I try to go wholesale stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you're kind of geared towards making money for women. Do you suspect in the future that you'll expand your target market, say single dads, or making a more masculine product?
Well, I'll let Meggan talk about that. But
Yes,
we've talked about that.
we've had, I've sampled and built out, I have the name of our dad line, or our man's brand, sampled out dad brands as well. We actually partner with some guy influencers that are, one of them is a single dad, a couple of them are, some of them are dads, are creators. Mr. Coleman. He's awesome. But anyways, they carry, like we have an Anna bag that can kind of cross over a little bit more masculine side as well. A lot of dads comment that the Caroline bag, while it's a feminine style, it's so comfortable that they're just like, I just own it in Disney World. Like, I'm good. I just carry it through the airport. And so moms take pictures all the time. They're very proud of it, that it's comfortable to the dad that's in their life. And so I love that question. That's a great question.
Why don't you talk about Ruby Jade? I was going to say, one of the reasons why we haven't gone the guys route, like, because we've developed bags, we've got samples, lots of samples of guys. We branded it out. We came out. It's like, we know this area really well and we know it works. And we do have requests for it, but it's like let's grow what's working rather than, it seems like a harder push to sell guys bags is my thought. But as far as expanding outside of just moms, you can talk about Ruby Jade and kind of where we're going with that.
Yeah, so one of the places we talked about earlier where we didn't pivot fast enough, so our audience has asked for probably 2 or 3 years now, we want smaller bags, we want smaller totes, we want crossbodies. Our kids now are 16 like me and 12, and so we don't need a diaper bag anymore, but we want Lily Jade quality. We love who you are, we love the community, and so we've watched diaper bag brands and other motherhood brands kind of just like yank the wheel hard and go like, I'm going to go the trendiest, most fashion route to take. And I'm not going to name them here, but you can go on their social channels and see exactly what I'm talking about. It'd probably be an interesting study in some ways. But they had anchored in motherhood like we had. They were selling to a mom. We really appealed to the mom, like, you just had a baby, like, you're exhausted. You don't feel like yourself, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Here's a bag for you that's gonna last and provide your needs and all of that. And so in that, watching our competitors kind of quickly go this more fashion, high trend route, there's been a lot of backlash. There's boards, there's Reddit, there's places to find things, but moms didn't care for that. Like, hey, I just had a baby and you sold me a diaper bag and now you're selling me that I'm supposed to look like this walking down Chicago's Avenue, like, with my new little bag on. And so our daughters, Caroline and Madeline, have actually grown up in the business with us, traveled the world with us, been into meetings with us. Our oldest daughter, who's 16, has been at our heels like, when can I design? Can I design something? She designed a bag when she was 12. It's the McKenna bag. I always say my girls are way better designers than I am, but we pivoted recently with the launch of their own collection and their own brand. And so they have their own separate brand. Their bags are in production. Here's one of them. This is a leather circle bag that women of all ages would think this is cool and like love it, whatever. But I would not push this on Lily Jade's site right now, exclusively for Lily Jade to Mama, who I know is not necessarily in that season of her life. And so we've just kind of grown either back way with women and then forward as well. And so it's definitely been a learning curve, but it's a new territory for us for sure.
Are we on time?
Thank you guys. Thank you.